Is your to-do list just getting way out of control? And do you feel like no matter what you do, there just seems to be more tasks rolling in and you just feel like there's no time in the day? Not enough time in the day, that is. Well, today I have Glenn Tranter. So he is a business coach and a friend of mine who specializes in helping executives, business owners, or even managers to just free up time, because sometimes when you just get in the habit of doing so much work, you don't have time to actually, step out of your tasks, your day-to-day tasks, and go, what is really my priority? How can I actually redesign my day to get more time? So this video is going to be very important for you, because if you can learn to really plan out your day and get more time back, you can really achieve so much in your life and have more time to do what you love. But before we go on that, go onto the video. If you're new to this channel, my name is Linh Podetti, and my goal is to help you achieve time freedom so you have more time for self, family, business, and life. So that's it. Let's get going and hear from Glenn. Hey everybody, so I have Glenn Tranter here, and today we're going to talk about how to manage your to-do list, because I don't know about you guys, but my to-do list goes really long. I've learned over the years to kind of reduce it, but hey, I reckon a lot of people out there need help in this area. So Glenn, welcome, and please help us.
Hey Lynn, thank you so much for having me part of the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So, why did you decide to even get into this area where you feel like you need to help people with managing their to-do list?
Yeah, well, most of us have too much to do and just not enough time. And I've been there and done that myself. And when that happens, a level of overwhelm occurs. So whilst we might be trying to work harder and get more done, we actually get less done.
Okay, so why does it get full in the first place? Like, what is going on with our human behavior, human race, that we just feel like we have to do so much?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting this, because if you think about it, if you start a new job, your role is probably reasonably narrow to start off with. So you're doing a specific few things. And then as you're there for longer and maybe you're getting some promotions, then your responsibilities grow. The things that you've got to do grow. So it keeps on growing and growing and growing. And then it gets to a level where our funnel is just getting overloaded with what we've got to do.
And no one teaches us what to do with the load, right? We are taught how to do our job and I guess just take on more things, but managing the task is not something people get trained in. Am I correct there?
Oh, absolutely. There's two aspects here. First of all, it's assumed that you can do it. It's just naturally assumed. Now, some people can do it quite naturally and others need a helping hand. The second aspect is we're not really good at putting up a hand and saying, I need help, I'm struggling here, because of the connotations it has involved in our role, which could be salary related as well.
So you're trying to say that people are afraid to even get help, or say, I can't take on more, or don't want to add in because they're scared they might lose their job?
Well, not necessarily lose their job, but they may not get a pay rise. So it has a hip pocket impact. And then there's that old Aussie saying of, she'll be right, mate. We've got that sort of going on as well. So there's so many factors that are driving it. But the bottom line is there's a lot of people out there who are struggling to get everything that they need to get done. So they leave work, they come home, they're tense with their family, they're struggling to sleep, or they might remember that they have to do something at 1 a.m. in the morning when they should be sleeping.
Yeah, I mean, is there a way out of this? Because I mean, if you're having all these to-dos and you still have to do them, well, your health and your family is going to be affected, but also you just can't get around to doing all the tasks, right? It's going to be delayed.
All right. So when I work with a lot of leaders and senior leaders, and this one, it's a really big one because they think they need to get more productive, and sometimes they do. But one of the first things we do is we look at their to-do list. And the question that I ask them is, how much is on there that you really should be doing? And most times it's a really simple answer. They just say, well, 100%, all of it is that I should be having more on there. And I go, right, okay. So to be successful in your role, step me through. What do you have to do? And to that question, will often, because people are mired in detail, so they'll give you so much explicit detail that it's just quite frankly boring. It is the first thing. But if I say to them, well, if you were going to go for a job at your dream role, your dream company doing the same role, what would you describe to them what you do, what's your achievements. And then that stops a lot of people in their tracks because they're mired in this detail that isn't really the important stuff. Or it's so big picture blue sky, it has no reality to what they're doing either. So,
wow, such a big contrast. Are you able to give an example of maybe one of your recent client or case study where, so we can really imagine the real case of someone whose example task and what it would end up being?
Yeah, the real classic. So almost any leader that I work with, what's happening is they're employed to do a strategic role. So they're to drive a business unit. And what's happening is they're mired in the detail. So when I ask this question of what it is they should be doing, or if they were to describe it to their dream employer, when they start to put some meat on the bone, we start finding it's the strategic aspects to their role. So key initiatives, key projects that they need to do, business transformation type activity. Now, what they're doing is they're caught up in the day-to-day firefighting. And what we find, what the real driver is deep down in their heart of hearts, is they're good at the operational day-to-day, but they're not good at doing the strategic aspect of the role. So they gravitate to where they're comfortable. So they're actually
easy too, right? Like you kind of get caught into doing things that are easy. You don't have to think. Yeah.
It's habitual thinking that we're talking about. So they're not carving out time for this stuff over here because they keep filling it up with the lesser important work over here. And sure, these people may not be procrastinators because you ask them, you come to an operational decision and they're like, boom, 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 they've got answers there. They're really quick, but it's actually a master form of procrastinating that they're doing because they're gravitating to where they're comfortable and they're not working on and focusing where they should be.
That is why I wake up at 3 a.m. because I need to have that time to work on the business. Before I gave myself that time, I actually probably was caught in the same thing, just love ticking off tasks. And I heard that you kind of get dopamine rush by just being able to tick through things. And the longer your list is and the more ticks you do, you feel good about yourself, but you're not actually achieving. And at the end of the day, isn't that more sabotaging to your job when you're actually not doing, like, you're not achieving the outcome of the role because you're caught up in the miniature?
Absolutely. And it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm too busy, I can't do this, if only. But when I see people who are super organized and I love ticking off lists and stuff, I say, hey, that's good to be organized, but being a list checker actually isn't productive because being productive is about outcomes. So that's what productivity is about. It's about outcomes. Sure, there's an efficiency bit that's about speed, but it's really about outcomes. And what are the outcomes you need to do to be successful in your role or the business requires you to do?
Yeah. So it seems like, even talking to a coach like yourself allows you to have time to analyze because you sit there on your own and you kind of guess and assume certain things are important or what your role is. But I'm just imagining if I was sitting next to you here and you're like, what is really your role? For me, it's like, what's your CEO role supposed to be? And I would really tell you that. And then you'll be able to tell me like, actually, like yes or no, or how do you find time for that, right? So what's the next step? It's like, first of all, clarifying that this is your strategic role you're supposed to do. Then what's the next step in now finding more time?
So with that, if I just touch on that for a moment, it's a light bulb moment for a lot of people asking these questions. And at the most extreme level where we've got someone who doesn't want to share much or if they're quite rigid, sometimes the conversation has to go along the lines is, listen, I don't really mean to say this. I don't want to offend you, but you're actually kidding yourself because what your role, what you should be doing and what you're doing, there's a disconnect here. So this is where we've really got to focus. So that second point is we've got to calm down. We've got to see them that they've got more space because otherwise they're overwhelmed. I've already got too much to do. So now we've got to try and carve out some time to make space for them. And there's a thought leader called Michael Hyatt, who's an author and productivity guy. And he's got a view that 80% of your task list shouldn't be there. Now, when I first heard that, I'm a cynical person by nature, and I just didn't believe it. But when I thought about putting a process around this, we can certainly carve down some of our to-do lists. Now, for some people, it might be 80%. For others, it might be 10%. It might be 15%. Whatever the number is, if you're getting more time, That's the important piece, because we can carve out some time. So the second step is what we do is we really want to take like a knife to hot butter through their to-do list. So we want to get it and say, so what really must be done versus what's a wish list? What's the nice to have? Because a lot of people, their to-do list, it's just a wish list. It's so big, it looks like this, but you're never going to get round to it. And it's just overwhelming because of that. So we try and take a knife to it and say, right, what can we just cut? What can we get rid of? The second part of that is then what can we either delegate or outsource? Because I might be a leader and I might be focusing too much on detail, and I could delegate that to part of my team, or I could outsource to a team like yours to get in a virtual assistant to come and do some of these roles. So there's different ways of doing that. And the third aspect of that, how can we get technology to help us? So what could we potentially automate or semi-automate instead of doing manual tasks? So something as simple as using like a calendar system like Book Like a Boss or Calendly or one of those tools, so people can self-book appointments for you rather than all that time, the back and forth with booking appointments. So that's how we try and get time savings for them.
Yeah. And how do you suggest preventing ourselves from all of a sudden going back to adding to-do list again? You know, I think I've been guilty of that in the past, where I would have a period of time where I declutter and I was like, yep, I'm on top of it now. And then all of a sudden you go back to your default way and you start adding on and doing all this stuff. So any prevention cure? Yeah.
And this is where part of the process comes in. So if you think about it, if you do a spring clean in your house, so every spring you clean your house, you declutter and it looks spick and span, and then the following month it starts getting cluttered again, and you get back to where it is. So next year, you got to do another spring clean. And the same happens with your to-do list. So one of the things that I have is I have what I call as a task buster checklist. And the task buster checklist that just says, hey, every month, as you're doing the tasks, continue to analyze what you should eliminate, outsource or delegate or automate. So you're continually looking at this, so it's just not growing and growing and growing.
You're right. The expectation is that it's not set and forget. It's like always review and always audit, because you need to spring clean your to-do list. Yeah.
The other one I'll add is a lot of people, what they do is they don't really plan. So each week they will schedule. I get a new task to do, right? I'll find a slot in my calendar. This is when I'm going to do it. I'm in this busy mode that I'm not really thinking all that much. So I just get into this scheduling mode. And each week I get my customers to actually do a weekly plan. And that weekly plan, it's a constraint-based weekly plan. So instead of just being this never-ending wish list, it starts off with, so how many hours do you want to work next week? So we do it on a Friday afternoon for the next week. How many hours do you want to work? Let's say it's 40 hours. How many hours have you already committed in your schedule? So let's say there's 20 hours. Then how many hours do you have to allow, or what percentage of your time do you have to allow for reactive time, where you don't know when you're going to do something, but you know the phone's going to ring X number of times a day. Let's say there's 10 hours. That leaves us with 10 hours left. Now, what do you want to do with that 10 hours? And let's start thinking about what's the high impact, most important work you need to do. So we've got a process of trying to keep the to-do list down, but we've also got a process that we're putting a laser beam on that most important work.
I love that. Yeah, it's all about proactive, not reactive there. Would love to hear your thought around remote working now. So working from home, and how is that changed or affecting people now compared to if they're in the workplace?
Everyone's sort of been working from home for about 12 months now. So while some people and some companies used to do it, but to the masses around March, April, 12 months ago, COVID came and everyone was abracadabra, we're now work from home experts. And the data that's coming out is finding that we're getting less and less switch off time at home, that we're not having a process where we can go away from our work. So we leave our laptop open, we'll come and check emails throughout the night, or if we don't have a workspace at home, then what we do is that we've got a space on the kitchen table or the dining room table, and the papers or laptop always stays there. So we've got to close off everything at the end of the day, and even go as far as it comes to the end of your day, go for a walk around the block so that you come in, it's like you're replicating you've been at the office. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is because we're working from home, and anyone with children, we're so much more integrated to what's happening in the family life. So we should, at the end of each day, we should have a to-do list for home, but a to-do list for our work. So what are the key things? So if anyone with children involved in sport might have school sort of sports or club sports or dancing or whatever it is, or pick up and drop off at school. So we need to schedule that kind of stuff. But we want to put down what's our big win for the day. What's our big win from a professional sense, from a work perspective, but also what's the big win from a home perspective as well, from the family perspective, so that we just don't go too much one way or the other.
Yeah. So can you explain more about the importance of that reflection? So that we feel that we've achieved, and not like sometimes you don't reflect, so you feel like you haven't achieved and you keep on hustling. Yeah. Is that right?
So one is just that whole sense of achievement. Two is sometimes the days roll into weeks, the weeks roll into months, and we feel like we're achieving nothing. But the reflection is also a learning. If it's not quite working for us, then what are we going to do better? And you'll probably find it's not getting dragged down into a bunch of details, unless I'm one of the, let's say, people at the business who have to do the detail. So it's quite different sometimes for someone who's involved in doing the detailed work from more of a senior leader of how they have to work.
Yeah, love it. So I guess I would love for you to elaborate more on, like, if we don't do anything about it, if we continue to have this long to-do list and just too busy to deal with it, what could actually happen to us?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, we'll overpromise and underdeliver. So there's the work side of things. Now, not only are we missing deadlines, which could mean some form of lost business, so there could be a business impact, but there's a reputational damage for the individual, whether we like it or not. So I see a lot of people have got all of the wonderful intent, but their systems don't support them to be effective. And then they're damaging their brand as such. Another aspect is that it's just the personal weight people are carrying around. Like, they're making life harder for themselves than they need to be. Or you get some people who, your customers or colleagues, where they just don't believe you anymore. So they're chasing you up. So we're increasing the level of communication. So there's a whole number of things going on here.
And also, I mean, for yourself, it led you back then in terms of overworking, and you became burnout as well. So do you want to touch a little bit on, I guess, even the drastic side of that?
Oh, yeah. So everything that I'm talking about, sort of how not to do it, I've actually done it before. So when I was super busy in an international role back in 2006. And for me, the level of overwhelm just started growing and growing and growing. So I would just work harder because I think I felt I could work my way out of it. But as my role was kept on expanding and expanding, that didn't work. So then I was working for longer hours, working harder, working longer hours, didn't have a sense of enjoyment in the work. And people were around me could see what was going on. But being a pretty pig-headed and stubborn sort of person, I just ignored all that well-meaning advice, and then I burnt out. So that's the extreme situation that happened to me. Never ever thought it would happen to me, because I've always been a high achiever, always been conscientious. Never been an issue until it was.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I actually know some friends who are on really high paying jobs, and it's very demanding, but they kind of accepted that this is just my job. My job always has rush deadlines and I have to work overtime, blah, blah. What would be your advice on that? I mean, because for me, obviously I started my business because I wanted to be able to control that time. Any advice for people on high paying jobs that demands their time and they feel like they have no choice?
Well, I think the first thing is that the highest performing athletes in the world, so we've got the Olympic Games coming up, they all have coaches. So they probably need a coach. And then just to recalibrate, to fine tune, to really question and help push them to the next level as well, because high paying and high powered jobs, they are demanding by their sheer nature. because otherwise everybody would be doing it. So it's the investment and return on investment of doing that is significant. So I think that's number one. Number two is that they need to invest in their teams, because so many leaders who are quite good, productive themselves, get dragged down by their team because they are assuming that the people should be mini-me's, just like me, and they're not. So there's an investment in their teams. But then what they've got to do is that rather than just having this big to-do list, I love the power of when. When are you going to do it? So when? So I like scheduling my work, my weekly planning process, and then scheduling, because if I don't, it'll just stay on an Excel spreadsheet or stay on a list or stay on somewhere. It won't get done.
Yeah, I so agree with you. You know, over the years now, any task, I have to plug it into the calendar because you need to actually do it. And if you don't plug it in, you kind of keep procrastinating to it another time. And I even plug in my family time or whatever else, because then you can have a clarity on like, how do you actually spend your day? Because you think you have all that time, but really, you know, there's just so much to do, not just work.
Yeah, and what you've just mentioned there is the concept of time boxing. And the concept of time boxing, it's such a powerful way of doing it. And I like to color code my time boxing based on different aspects I'm doing. I've only got about 4 different colors, but for the leaders that I work with, we want to make sure that we've put the strategic piece, because that's often the piece that's just lacking for a lot of them. We want to almost smack them in the face like a wet fish, that it's, if they haven't got it there, they can see it. And that means that, hey, I've got to get on to doing it because this is what's going to drive my business unit.
That is amazing. Well, thank you so much, Glenn. How do people connect with you to get help if they really feel like, you know, I can't do this anymore?
My website is www.glenntranter.com, and my mobile number's 0417 424 730. And I'm on LinkedIn. I post 3 times a week on LinkedIn and would love anyone to drop me a line. Email address is glenn@glenntranter.com.
There you go. You've got all his contact details there. He's definitely here to serve. What is the last takeaway you want people to walk away with?
Ignoring it is an option, but for most of us, it's not a good option. So we've got to do something about it. You can reduce your to-do list. You can reduce the amount of overwhelm. And even if you just cut your to-do list by 10%, which carved out 10% more time to spend on that high impact, important work of your role, hey, that's a huge win for you. Yeah. That's better than doing nothing at all.
Love it. Thank you so much, Glenn. I really enjoy our chat today because I totally believe in everything you're saying, because I'm all about time freedom.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
Well, there you have it. Which was your favorite tip? Because I love everything that Glenn said, and I agree with him, because it did take me having a coach and to learn to redesign my day. And I always kind of redesign my day every single, few months or something, because you end up going back into your old habits of adding all these tasks into your to-do list. So you always need to spring clean your task list. But yeah, love to hear in the comments below if you have any questions around time management. I have more videos here for you to watch if you'd like to learn more about time freedom. And I will hope to see you again next time. Thank you so much.